I'm James Arnold, 70 years old now. You wouldn't think someone my age would be too surprised by much. Life, it's simple when you get to be my age. You work, you save, you build something with your hands, and you pass it on to your family. I never asked for much more than that. A peaceful retirement with my wife, Dorothy, some fishing now and then, and maybe a little time with the grandkids. Life was supposed to be easy from here on out. That is, until Megan. Megan is my daughter-in-law, married to my son Brad for 5 years now. I always thought of her as a decent enough woman, a bit quiet, a little reserved, but she seemed to love Brad and treated Dorothy well enough. I'll be honest with you, I never fully trusted her. There was something about her I couldn't quite put my finger on. It wasn't that she was rude or malicious, but she had this air about her like she was always playing some game, some long con that no one else was privy to. But who was I to question her? Brad loved her. They were happy, or at least it seemed that way. We were living a pretty routine life. Dorothy and I, we didn't need much. The house was paid off, and I had a small savings, a modest pension from the business I built up over the years. I wasn't rich, not by any means, but I was comfortable. Dorothy and I had talked about taking a small trip to Florida for a week, just the two of us, before the weather turned cold. We were looking forward to it. It had been a while since we'd had some time alone, and I thought it would be nice to get away from the hustle and bustle of life. So, we booked a condo near the beach. Nothing fancy. I wasn't in the mood for anything extravagant. I had a small amount of cash set aside for it, just in case we needed extra spending money, but I didn't think I'd need much more. Dorothy had insisted I'd bring my credit card along in case of emergencies, so I tucked it in my wallet and thought nothing of it. We left for Florida a week later now. I don't remember exactly when I started noticing something was wrong. The first thing that tipped me off was a strange charge on my bank account. Small, $250 purchase from an online retailer. I thought maybe I'd made it myself, forgotten about it in all the excitement of the trip. But I couldn't recall buying anything, especially from that place. It was a store I'd never heard of. It was a week before I even thought to check my account again. While we were still in Florida, I pulled up my bank's app to check the balance. I was trying to keep an eye on things, make sure I wasn't overspending. The charges hadn't stopped. There were dozens of them, but now they were no longer small. One was for $3,500 at a luxury clothing store in New York. Another was for $8,000 at an electronics store. I scrolled down further. There were charges for hotel stays, $6,000 here, $12,000 there at places I'd never stayed, places I'd never even heard of. The numbers were adding up. In total, there were charges that easily exceeded $50,000. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. My mind raced. How could this happen? I thought back to the last time I had used the card. I hadn't used it at all, not since I'd left it with Dorothy for emergencies during the trip. It dawned on me slowly, like a creeping shadow. Megan, she had been at our house before we left, a few days before we flew out. She'd come by to drop off some papers for Brad to sign, and then nothing. That was the last time I saw her before we left for Florida. She was the only one who had access to my wallet, the only one who could have taken my card. I felt a pang in my chest, a mixture of anger and disbelief. Could it really be true? Could she have taken my card without telling me? I immediately tried calling Dorothy, but she was out shopping. I was alone in the condo, sitting in the kitchen, staring at my phone, my hands shaking. I couldn't sit still. I called the bank's customer service line and asked them to help me investigate the charges. They told me to cancel the card immediately, which I did, but they couldn't help much more until I could verify the charges. The best they could do was send me a list of every transaction made on my account in the last 2 weeks. As I stared at the list, my stomach dropped. There it was, clear as day. Megan's name appeared in nearly every charge. Some of the items she'd purchased weren't just expensive, they were extravagant. A $40,000 reservation at a 5-star hotel in the city. Another $15,000 on a shopping spree at a luxury boutique in Manhattan. Jewelry, electronics, designer clothes. The money was gone, just like that. And I had no idea what to do next. I didn't know whether to be angrier with her or with myself for not seeing it sooner. She'd taken advantage of my trust, and worse, he'd done it right under my nose. I felt like a fool. My whole life, I'd prided myself on working hard and making sure my family was taken care of, and this is how they repaid me. With betrayal. I didn't want to confront her over the phone though. I couldn't. This was something I needed to face her about in person. But how could I even begin? What could I possibly say to her? You took my bank card and spent my savings. No, it didn't feel like enough. It wasn't just the money, it was the trust. The way she had so easily crossed that line, treating me like I didn't matter, like I was just a bank to her. By the time Dorothy returned to the condo, I was already on edge. My mind was spinning with everything I had seen. Dorothy could tell something was wrong the moment she walked in. "What's going on, James?" she asked, her eyes scanning my face, searching for the reason I was so tense. I didn't even wait for her to sit down before I said it. "Megan's been using my card." "What do you mean?" Dorothy asked, looking confused. "What are you talking about?" "I mean, she's been spending my money, using my card without my permission, and it's not just a few $100s, Dorothy, it's over $100,000. Dorothy gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "What? No, James, that can't be. She wouldn't do something like that. I wish I was wrong, but the charges don't lie." I threw my phone on the table, showing her the list of purchases. "Look at this. The hotel stays, the shopping sprees, the electronics, the jewelry, all of it's in her name." Dorothy's face went pale as she scrolled through the transactions, her breath catching in her throat with each new charge. "Oh my God," she whispered. I don't know what to say." "Neither do I replied, shaking my head. "But we have to do something. This can't go on." The next morning, I didn't waste any time. I called Megan. My hand shook as I held the phone to my ear, the weight of what I was about to confront hanging heavily in the air. I had to do this. There was no other way. I couldn't let her get away with it. The nerve she had, using my card like it was her own. And what hurt the most was that she thought she could get away with it. That I would never notice. When she picked up, there was a long, uncomfortable pause. I could feel her hesitation through the line. "Hello?" Megan's voice was cautious, tentative. "Megan," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, but it came out low and sharp, like a knife. "We need to talk about the charges on my bank account." I heard her inhale sharply, a quick, almost imperceptible gasp. She knew exactly what I was talking about. "What charges?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight. "You know damn well what charges. The ones you've been racking up with my card. Don't play dumb with me, Megan." My words felt cold and biting, each one a weight I could barely carry. There was a long silence, and I could almost picture her in her living room, pacing back and forth. I waited. She had to admit it. She couldn't deny it. I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice a little too high. "I didn't cut the crap, Megan. I have the proof. Over $100,000 spent. I've seen the receipts, the hotel bookings, the shopping sprees, the electronics, the jewelry. They all have your name on them." There was another pause, and I could hear the faint sound of her breathing, uneven now. "James, I didn't mean for it to go this far," she finally admitted, her voice cracking. "I was just trying to fix things, you know? Brad and we've been struggling. I didn't know what else to do." My blood ran cold. Struggling? Struggling with what, Megan? "Brad has a good job. You have everything you need. You went behind my back and stole from me, and now you're telling me it was because you were struggling. That's your excuse." She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone was almost pleading. "I was just trying to get ahead. Brad doesn't know about any of this, James. He doesn't understand. I was just trying to do something, anything, to feel like I was in control again. I didn't know how else to fix things. I didn't think you'd notice." I felt a pang of something like pity, but I shoved it aside. She was trying to manipulate me, to make it sound like I should feel sorry for her, but I wasn't buying it. "You didn't think I'd notice," I repeated, disbelief filling my voice. "I trusted you, Megan. You were like family to me, and you just betrayed me. I gave you access to my home, to my life, and this is how you repay me." Her voice was shaking now, no longer confident, no longer trying to hide the guilt. "James, I'm so sorry. I know I made a mistake. I didn't think it through. You didn't think at all," I snapped. "This is beyond a mistake, Megan. This is theft. This is criminal." There was a long pause, and then, as though the weight of it finally hit her, she sighed. I know it was wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. Please don't tell Brad. Please don't tell him." I felt a flicker of anger deep inside me. "So now you're asking me to protect you, after everything you've done, after you've stolen from me, and you want me to keep quiet for your sake? I didn't mean to hurt you, James. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I was desperate. I laughed bitterly, the sound rough in my throat. Desperate. That's the story you're going with. You've been living off my generosity for years, and now you're desperate. I've been nothing but good to you. Megan, and this is what you do? She was crying now, the sound barely audible, but I could hear it. She was breaking, but that didn't matter. Nothing mattered now except making sure this didn't slide under the rug. She wasn't going to walk away from this scot-free. I'll fix it, James, she said through her tears. I'll pay it back, I promise. Please, just don't tell Brad. He'll hate me. He won't forgive me. I could feel my anger shifting into something colder, more calculated. Oh, I'm sure he'll be thrilled when he finds out what his wife has been doing behind his back. You've already lied to him, Megan. You've already broken his trust. You're asking me to cover for you now. What kind of person does that? Her voice faltered as she tried to compose herself. I'll make it right. I'll find a way to pay you back. I swear. Just give me a little time. You don't get to make promises anymore, I said, my voice steely. You've lost that privilege. There was silence on the other end of the line, and I let it hang there for a moment. I didn't need to say anything else. She had to know by now that this was bigger than just a simple apology. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke again, her voice small and weak. Please, don't tell him I'll do anything. I'll make it right. You'll pay me back. How? I asked, my voice dangerously calm now. How do you intend to pay back $100,000? You think that's something you can just fix with a few words? A few promises? I don't know, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But I'll try. I swear. I just need more time. Time, I said, my voice low. You think I'm going to give you time? After what you've done? I didn't know what else to do, James. I didn't know how to fix everything. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my composure. You can start by telling Brett. He has to know the truth. Megan, and once he knows, you'll have to face the consequences of your actions. You won't be able to run away from this. Not anymore. I didn't wait for her to respond. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling not from fear, but from the raw anger that coursed through me. I had given her a chance. I had tried to understand, but she had pushed me too far. There was no going back from this. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my mind spinning with what I had just heard. The betrayal was one thing, but the lies, the manipulation, those were what cut the deepest. I couldn't sleep that night. The anger still lingered, gnawing at me like a constant ache in my chest. Megan's words replayed in my mind, her tearful pleas echoing in my head. She was desperate. She was sorry. But none of that mattered now. She'd crossed the line, and I had to make sure she didn't get away with it. The trust was shattered, and there was no putting it back together again. The next morning, I waited for Brad to come home. He worked late sometimes, but today I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I had to tell him. I had to make him understand that his wife, the woman he loved, had taken advantage of me, used my card to rack up an insane amount of debt, over $100,000. I knew this would destroy him. I had no illusions about that. Brad was a good man. He had his flaws, sure, but he wasn't the type to hurt anyone. He was loyal, hard-working, and yet here I was, preparing to tear his world apart. I spent the morning pacing around the house, nervously waiting for him to come through the door. Dorothy could tell something was off. She kept giving me worried glances, but I didn't know how to explain it to her without saying it out loud. Finally, around 5 o'clock, I heard the front door creak open. I stood up from the kitchen table and walked toward the hallway. Brad's voice came from the entryway as he greeted Dorothy. I could hear the sound of his boots hitting the hardwood floor. Hey, Dad, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. I didn't beat around the bush. We need to talk. Brad, it's about Megan. The look on his face shifted. Immediately, the concern apparent in his eyes. He walked into the living room, his expression softening as he saw me standing there. What's going on with Megan? Is she okay? I could feel my chest tightening as I tried to gather my thoughts. This wasn't going to be easy. Brad, this isn't easy to say, but I need you to hear me out. I started. It's about the money. Megan has been using my bank card. He frowned, clearly not understanding at first. What do you mean, using your bank card? I held up my phone and tapped through the bank's app, bringing up the list of charges. There it was, plain as day. Over $100,000 in charges, all made by Megan. The items were lavish hotels, clothing, electronics, jewelry. I had all the proof right in front of me. Brad's eyes scanned the screen, and I could see the disbelief starting to creep into his face. Dad, this doesn't make any sense. Are you sure it's Megan? Look at the receipts, Brad. Her name is on every single one. I know you don't want to believe it, but she's the one who's been spending my money without permission. I trusted her, Brett. I really did. And now she's gone and done this. Brad stood there for a long moment, the silence between us heavy. I watched as his face went from confusion to something darker, something I didn't want to see. No, he finally said, shaking his head. This isn't right. Megan wouldn't do something like this. She wouldn't. Maybe there's some kind of mistake. Maybe someone else got access to your card. I shook my head, my anger rising again. Brad, there's no mistake. I've been to the bank. I've seen the transactions. She took my card, and she used it like it was hers. And now I'm left picking up the pieces. Brad seemed to stumble, caught between disbelief and the rising tide of something else I couldn't quite place. He was in shock, trying to make sense of what I was telling him. His eyes darted back to the phone screen, then back to me, as though searching for some other explanation, some other way out of the nightmare I was thrusting upon him. I don't know what to say, Dad. I can't believe it, he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Megan has always been so careful with money. She's never done anything like this before. There has to be some mistake. No mistake, I said firmly. He took my card. She'd spent my money. She's the one who's been living like this behind my back. You need to face it, Brett. She's not the person you think she is. He let out a deep sigh, then turned away from me, walking towards the window. I could hear him mumbling to himself, trying to process the reality of what I was telling him. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Brad, I said softly, stepping forward. You need to confront her. This is serious. This isn't just about money. It's about trust. She betrayed you. She betrayed me. Brad turned back to face me, his face pale, eyes wide with confusion and hurt. I don't know how to deal with this, Dad. How do I even talk to her about this? How can I trust her after something like this? I could see the tears welling up in his eyes, the hurt starting to show. He wasn't angry yet, not at her. But it was there, underneath the surface, just waiting to break through. I could only imagine how this would destroy him. You have to talk to her, Brett. You have to ask her about this. You can't keep living in denial. You have to face it, for your sake and for hers. Brad nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. He wasn't sure what to say next. I didn't know if he was angry with me for putting him in this position, or if he was angry with Megan for betraying him. I'll talk to her, Dad, he said finally, though there was no conviction in his voice. But I don't know if I can just forgive her for this. I don't know if I can trust her again. I didn't answer right away. What could I say? I wasn't sure I could trust her again either. She'd crossed the line that couldn't be uncrossed. I had no illusions that things would ever go back to the way they were before this. The trust, the family bonded, was all broken now. I know, son, I said quietly. I know, but you have to do what's right. I watched him leave the room, his face set in a grim expression. I knew what was coming. Megan had no idea what kind of storm was heading her way. She thought she could hide behind her lies, but Brad was about to find out the truth, and when he did, there would be no going back. The days following my conversation with Brad felt like I was holding my breath. Every time I saw him, I could tell he was on the edge of something. He was quiet, distant, and it was clear that the weight of everything was starting to wear him down. His mind kept racing, trying to make sense of what Megan had done. I had tried to prepare him for the worst, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. Brad didn't confront Megan right away. He needed time to process what I had told him, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. His wasn't something you would just walk up to your wife and accuse her of, without expecting the world to come crashing down. On the third day, he told me he was ready to talk to her. The decision to confront her wasn't something I could make for him. I understood that, but I could see in his eyes that he was struggling with what came next. I didn't envy him. How could he reconcile the person he thought he knew with the reality that was now sitting in front of him? Megan's at home right now, isn't she? I asked Brad one evening. He was sitting in the living room, his hands clenched around the edge of the chair like he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. Yeah, I've been waiting for the right moment, he said, his voice low, almost like he was afraid to say the words out loud. I'm not sure how to do this, Dad. What if I'm wrong? What if it's all just some big mistake? You're not wrong, Brad, I said firmly. I've seen the charges. She's taken from me, and now you need to ask her. You need to know the truth. Don't let her control the story anymore. Brad nodded, his face tight with the kind of worry I hadn't seen in him for years. He wasn't just worried about confronting Megan. He was worried about what it meant for their marriage, for his life, and I couldn't blame him. His world was about to be turned upside down. That night, after dinner, Brad told me he was going to confront her. I gave him a few words of advice, though I wasn't sure how much good they'd do. Just listen to her, Brad. Don't let her talk her way out of this. You have every right to know why she did it. If she loves you, she'll have to tell you the truth. Brad didn't say much in response. He just stood up, gave me a small nod, and left the house. I could feel the tension building in the air as I waited, staring out the window, wondering what would happen next. It wasn't long before Brad returned. His face was pale, his eyes wide, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stood in the doorway, staring at me as if trying to process everything that had just happened. "What?" I asked, my voice roughed with concern. Brad didn't answer immediately. He stepped into the living room, sinking down into the chair with a heavy sigh. "It's worse than I thought, Dad," he finally said. "I don't even know where to begin." I sat down across from him, my stomach in knots. "What did she say?" Brad looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the depth of the pain in his eyes. He wasn't just hurt. He was destroyed. I could see it in the way he slumped into the chair, the way he didn't even have the energy to hold himself up. "She didn't deny it," he said quietly, almost as if the words were too hard to say. "At first, she tried to make excuses, but I wasn't having it. I kept showing her the charges, and she just broke down." I listened, hanging on to every word. I had been expecting her to deny it, to lie her way out of the situation. But this was different. She said she didn't know what else to do, Dad. That she was trying to fix things, make our life better. She said we've been struggling, and she thought if she spent the money, we could catch up, get ahead, like it would all be okay in the end. I felt a rush of anger flood through me again. That's her excuse. She thought she could just take my money and fix her problems. Brad nodded slowly, his hands running through his hair. Yeah, she kept saying she didn't think I'd ever find out, that it was just small stuff at first, but then it got bigger. She said it was her way of coping with everything, that she was feeling overwhelmed, and she just didn't think. I shook my head in disbelief. This is insane, Brett. She spent over $100,000, and she's telling you it was just some mistake, some way of coping. She lied to you, she lied to both of us. I know, Brad said, his voice breaking slightly. But then she said something else. She told me she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me, that she didn't want me to find out this way. She said she'd pay it all back, that she'd fix everything. I could feel my anger shifting to something else, something colder. Did she really think she could just fix this with a few promises? Brad's eyes met mine, and I saw the weight of what he was carrying. I don't know, Dad. I don't know what to believe anymore. She's been lying to me for who knows how long, and now she's asking for forgiveness like it's nothing. It's like nothing happened, like none of this matters. I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, it was all too much, but I had to hold it together for Brad. He was the one who was truly suffering. In all of this, what are you going to do, Brad? I asked gently. You can't just forgive her and move on. Not after everything she's done. Brad looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the man he was becoming. He wasn't the same person who had married Megan all those years ago. He was a man who had seen the truth, who had been forced to confront the ugliest part of his marriage. I don't know, Dad, he said, his voice strained. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. I don't know if I even want to. I didn't have an answer for him. How could I? I couldn't tell him what to do. But one thing was clear. Megan's world was about to come crashing down. She had betrayed the trust of everyone who had ever cared about her, and now she would have to face the consequences. As Brad sat there, lost in his thoughts, I could hear the faint sound of Megan's voice in the background. She was calling him, trying to fix things, trying to lie her way back into his good graces. But Brad didn't pick up the phone. He didn't need to hear any more lies. The days after Brad's confrontation with Megan were a blur. He was a man divided, torn between the woman he had married and the reality that was now undeniable. Megan had been part of their life for 5 years, and Brad had spent those years building his future with her. But now, that future seemed fractured, tainted by the betrayal she had wrought. I could see the internal battle waging within him, the weight of love and betrayal pulling him in two directions. Brad stayed with me for a few days, unsure of what to do. He hadn't gone home to Megan, not yet. It wasn't that he wanted to keep running away from the situation. He just didn't know how to face her. How do you look the person you trusted more than anyone else in the eye when you know they've destroyed everything you've built together? He spent long hours in the living room, pacing, making calls to friends, even his therapist. I didn't interfere. There was nothing I could say that would make the pain go away. I had warned him that it wouldn't be easy, that this was going to be one of the hardest things he'd ever have to do. I spent my time in silence, too. I'd made my peace with the fact that Megan was no longer the person I thought she was. But for Brad's sake, I hoped deep down that there was some way for him to move on without destroying his own sense of self, without letting her drag him down into a mess. And then, on the fourth day, it happened. Megan called again. This time, she wasn't trying to make excuses. She wasn't playing the victim. No, this time, it was different. She was desperate. Brad was sitting on the couch when the phone rang. He looked at it for a moment, then back at me. "It's Megan," he said quietly, like he wasn't sure whether to pick it up or not. "Do what you need to do," I said, though my voice was tight. "But don't let her twist this, Brad. You've already heard her excuses. There's nothing left to say." He hesitated, his hand hovering over the phone. Then, slowly, he answered. "Megan." "Brad." Her voice came through, trembling. It was softer than usual, but it wasn't an apology, at least not the kind that would heal the wound she'd inflicted. "I need to talk to you. Please, it's important." Brad sighed, his face drawn. "We've talked, Megan. I don't know what else you want me to say. Please, just listen to me. I've been thinking about everything. About what I did. About how I lied to you. I know I can never take it back. But Brad, I love you. I need you to understand why I did it." Brad's jaw clenched, and I saw his fist ball up in his lap. I knew he was trying to keep it together, to remain calm. But I also knew the anger was bubbling just beneath the surface. The hurt, the disbelief, it was all still there, raw and unhealed. "Why, Megan, why did you think you could do this? Why did you think it was okay to spend my dad's money, to lie to me like that?" His voice cracked a little, but he still wasn't shouting. He was calm, too calm, like he was holding back a storm. "I didn't think you'd ever understand," she continued, the desperation creeping into her voice. "I was trying to fix things. You've been so focused on your work, and I felt like I was losing you. We've been struggling. Brad, you never really saw it. You never knew how hard it was for me, trying to hold everything together. I thought if I could just make it better, just for us, everything would work out." Brad's face was unreadable now. He was no longer the man who had married her 5 years ago. This man, this Brad, was someone else. Someone who had just seen his world crumble around him. "You thought stealing from my dad would fix everything. You thought that would make things better. I thought you'd never find out," she said, the words coming out so quietly, so broken. "I thought if I just spent a little, it wouldn't be a big deal. I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't know what else to do." The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the sound of Brad's breathing from where I stood. He was holding the phone in a tight grip, his knuckles white. He didn't speak at first, and Megan's voice began to waver again. "Brad, I know I've hurt you. I've hurt both of you. I can't undo it, but I can try to make it right. Please, let me fix this. I'll do anything. I'll pay back every penny, every single cent. Just don't leave me. Don't give up on us." There was something in her voice now, something genuine, but it wasn't enough. I could hear it, the pleading, the desperation, but it didn't change the fact that she had stolen from me. And more importantly, she had lied to Brad. She had taken advantage of his trust. Brad sat in silence for a moment, and I saw his chest rise and fall as he exhaled sharply. His hands shook. He was fighting with everything he had to hold it together. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore, Megan," Brad finally said, his voice low but steady. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've crossed a line that's hard to come back from. I wanted to believe in us. I really did. But I don't know how to fix it." I could see him struggling with his words, as if each one was harder to say than the last. He was looking for something in her voice, something to convince him that she was worth saving, that their marriage was still worth saving. "I can't fix this, Megan," he continued, his voice quieter now. "I can't fix you, and I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when you've been lying to me this whole time." She didn't respond at first. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Brett. I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen." Brad's eyes were hard now, resolute. He wasn't angry, but I could see the finality in his gaze. "I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change what you did." With that, Brad hung up the phone. I watched him as he sat back in his chair, his face drawn with the weight of what he'd just done. He had made his decision, and I knew, deep down, that this was the moment he had crossed over from trying to save something that was already broken to accepting that it was time to move on. The days that followed that phone call with Megan were the hardest for Brad. He barely spoke, barely ate, and spent hours walking around the house like a ghost. I knew he was devastated, but at the same time, I could see the shift in him. The man I had raised, the man who had always put others first, was now confronting something he'd never imagined. His trust had been shattered, his future thrown into uncertainty, and there was no going back from this. I tried to give him space, but as his father, I couldn't help but watch him closely. This was not just about the money anymore. It was about his entire world, the foundation of his marriage, his belief in people and in himself. I had warned him that confronting Megan would be painful, but I had no idea how far this would go. He'd tried to be patient, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but now I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He was done pretending that everything was fine. On the third day after the call, Brad finally spoke. He'd been sitting in the living room, staring at the floor, running his fingers over the back of the couch, when he looked up at me. "Dad," he said quietly, "I need to make a decision. I can't keep living like this." I could see the weight on his shoulders, the fatigue that had settled deep into his bones. It was clear he was at the crossroads of something monumental. I sat down beside him, not knowing what to expect. "What decision, son?" I asked, my voice softer now, careful. "What are you thinking?" Brad ran a hand through his hair, then let it fall back to his lap. He looked up at me with a mix of frustration and sorrow, but there was clarity in his eyes now. "I've been thinking about everything. About Megan, about what happened, and about what's next. I don't know if I can stay with her after this. I don't think I can ever trust her again." The words stung me, though I wasn't surprised. I had seen this coming. I had known, from the moment Megan's betrayal had come to light, that their marriage would never be the same again. The truth was, no matter how much Brad wanted to believe in her, he couldn't ignore the reality. His wife had stolen from him and from me, and while she could apologize 1,000 times, some wounds can't be healed with mere words. "I know, son," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Trust is everything in a marriage. Without it, what's left? I'm not telling you what to do, but you can't keep holding on to something that's already broken." Brad nodded slowly, but his eyes were filled with uncertainty. It didn't need me to tell him this was going to hurt, but I saw him trying to make sense of it all. "I thought I could fix things, Dad," he said, his voice cracking a little. "I thought we could work through it. But now I don't know if I even know who she is anymore." Sometimes, Brad, the hardest part is letting go. You can't fix everything, especially when the other person isn't willing to help themselves. He was silent for a long time, just staring ahead, processing. I didn't push him. I knew he needed time. But I also knew this was his decision. He couldn't live his life for anyone else, not even me. He had to do what was best for him. Later that afternoon, Brad made the call. He told me he was going to confront Megan one more time. He didn't know what he was going to say yet, but he knew it was time to end things. He was done, and this time, it wasn't just about the money. It was about his peace of mind, his future, and his dignity. He called Megan, and I could hear her voice from across the room. She had been expecting him to call, I think, but nothing could have prepared her for what he was about to say. She answered quickly, almost too eagerly, but the conversation that followed was as inevitable as it was painful. "Megan," Brad started, his voice steady but raw. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you, about us, and about what happened. And I don't know where to go from here, but I know one thing: I can't move forward with you." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Megan's breathing, the shakiness in her voice when she finally spoke. "Brad, please, don't do this," she begged, her voice breaking. "I know I've hurt you, but I swear to you, I was just trying to make things better. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I'm sorry. I'd do anything to make it right." "I don't think you can make it right anymore, Megan," Brad replied, his voice calm, though the pain was evident. "You've broken my trust, and that's something I can't get back. I can't live in a relationship built on lies, I don't know who you are anymore, and I can't keep pretending I do. Megan started to cry, her voice pleading. Brad, please don't leave me. I love you. I'll do anything. I swear I'll change. Just give me another chance. Brad paused, letting the silence hang in the air. I could hear the tension in his breath, the struggle in his heart. But he knew that it wasn't about her asking for another chance anymore. It was about him. I've already given you more chances than I should have, Megan, Brad said softly. But I can't keep living like this. I can't keep wondering if you're lying to me. I need more than that. I need trust. And right now, I don't think I can trust you. I didn't hear her response. Brad hung up the phone before she could say anything else. He sat there in silence for a while, his eyes distant, lost in thought. I wanted to say something, to offer comfort, but I knew there was nothing left to say. He had made his decision. What now, son? I asked quietly. Brad looked up at me, his eyes red but resolute. Now, I move on. I need to start over. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I can't keep living in the past. I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle over us both. You're doing the right thing. It won't be easy, but you'll get through it. Brad stood up, looking out the window at the setting sun. I hope so. But right now, it feels like everything is falling apart. I know, Sana said, placing a hand on his shoulder. But sometimes, things have to fall apart before they can come back together. Brad didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The silence spoke volumes. The days after Brad's decision to end things with Megan felt like a slow crawl. I had hoped that he'd feel a sense of relief, but instead, there was only quiet. The kind of quiet that fills the house with a sense of emptiness. Brad was moving through the motions. He started spending more time at the office, finally pushing forward with his projects that had been sidelined for months. He threw himself into work, and while it was a healthy distraction, I could tell he was still carrying the weight of everything that had happened. For me, the quiet was just as deafening. I had raised Brad to be strong, but this was a different kind of strength. The kind you had to find when everything you thought you knew had been ripped away from you. It wasn't just Megan's betrayal, it was the loss of a future he had imagined. With her, a future that no longer existed. The real reckoning, however, was just beginning. Megan, still consumed by her desperation, refused to accept the end of her marriage. She wasn't ready to let go, not by a long shot, and she was about to make one last, disastrous attempt to fix things. It was a week after the phone call that Brad had finally moved out of the house. He'd decided to rent a small apartment, away from everything. I could tell that he was trying to create a space where he could heal. It was painful to watch, but I knew he needed to do this for himself. He hadn't spoken to Megan since the call, and while he had cut all contact, I could see the emotional toll it was taking. That was when she showed up at the office. I had just returned from a meeting when I got a call from Brad. His voice was tight, urgent. Dad, Megan's here. At the office, my heart sank. What do you mean? She's there. Brad, you told her to leave you alone? Why didn't you block her number? I did, Dad, he said, his voice strained. But she came here. She's waiting in the lobby. I don't know what she wants. I don't want her to cause a scene, but I don't know how to handle this. I could hear the frustration in his voice, the anxiety creeping in. I knew what Megan was capable of. This wasn't just about fixing things anymore. This was about control, about trying to take back what she'd lost. How come down there? I said quickly, stay calm. Don't engage with her. I'm on my way. When I arrived at the office, I could see her immediately, sitting in the lobby, fidgeting nervously in her seat. She didn't see me at first, but I could tell she was tense. There was a desperation in her eyes, a kind of wild energy that was hard to ignore. As I walked toward the door, I saw Brad step out of his office, his shoulders stiff with tension. Dad, he said, his voice low, I don't know what to do. I nodded, giving him a reassuring look before turning toward Megan. Megan, I said, my voice calm but firm, we need to talk. You can't keep doing this. You need to leave Brad alone. Megan stood up quickly, her face flushed, her eyes wide with emotion. Please, James, please, just let me talk to him. I need him to understand. I've been thinking about everything. I know I made a mistake, but I can't just let him go. I love him, James. I need him to understand that. I can fix this. I swear I will. I could see the desperation in her face, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate Brad again. Megan, I said, my voice unwavering, you've already done enough damage. You need to step back and accept what's happened. Brad has made his decision. This isn't something you can fix with more promises. It's too late for that. Brad stood behind me, not speaking, but his body language spoke volumes. His arms were crossed, his jaw set, but there was something else. He was exhausted. He was done, and I could see it in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Megan," Brad finally said, his voice cutting through the silence. "I can't keep doing this. I don't trust you anymore. I can't rebuild what we had. I need to move on. You need to accept that." Megan's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw something I hadn't expected: genuine regret. But it was fleeting. Almost immediately, the desperation returned, her eyes hardening with a glimmer of something darker. "I didn't ask for this," she spat, her voice rising. "You think you can just walk away from me? You think you can throw me out like trash? I didn't do all of this for nothing. I won't let you destroy everything we built. I won't let you walk away and leave me with nothing." Brad stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "You don't get to control me anymore, Megan. You don't get to control this situation. I'm done, and I need you to leave." For a moment, I thought Megan might collapse in defeat, but instead, she took a step back, her eyes narrowing. "You think this is over, Brad? You think you can just walk away from everything and leave me with nothing? You don't know who you're dealing with." There was a chill in her voice now, a coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. Megan wasn't just angry, she was dangerous. And in that moment, I realized that this was more than just a marriage falling apart. McGann wasn't going to let Brad go without a fight, and that fight was about to escalate. "You're making a mistake," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You're pushing too hard, McGann. This isn't something you can fix with anger. You need to leave now." For a brief second, she hesitated. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Brad and I stood there, the tension thick in the air. I could see the weight lifting off his shoulders, but I knew it wasn't over. McGann wasn't done, and neither was this battle. Brad looked at me, his eyes tired but determined. "I thought I could handle this on my own, Dad, but I don't know if I can keep doing this." "You don't have to do it alone, Brad," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll handle it together. But it's time to take control of your life. You've made the right choice." But as I looked at Brad, I knew that Megan's last words weren't just empty threats. She was about to show just how far she was willing to go to keep a grip on him, and this fight was far from over. The next few days were tense. I could see that Brad was holding it together, but just barely. He had made his choice, but the weight of the decision still hung heavy in the air. Megan was still lurking around, like a storm cloud that hadn't quite passed, and her threat that day in the office didn't sit well with me. I knew she wasn't going to just let go. This wasn't the kind of person who just accepted defeat. McGann was desperate, and desperation often leads to dangerous choices. I spent a lot of time with Brad, trying to keep his mind occupied. We went to the local diner for breakfast, talked about old times, and tried to keep things light. But I could see the toll this whole ordeal had taken on him. The man I knew was still in there, but the weight of betrayal had left its mark. It wasn't just about Megan's actions anymore. It was about what Brad was losing: the trust he once had in his own judgment, in his relationship with the woman he had loved, and in the life he thought they were building together. And then, 2 days after her last visit to his office, Megan made her final move. It came in the form of an email, but not just any email, a threat. Brad was sitting at the kitchen table when he opened it. I saw his expression change immediately, a mixture of shock and disbelief flooding his face. "Dad, you need to see this," he said, his voice tight with anger. I walked over and read the email over his shoulder. It was short, but its implications were clear. Subject: "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Brad. I hope you understand the position you've put me in. You've made it clear that you don't care about me anymore. But don't think you're walking away from this without consequences. I've more than just your father's money to worry about. There are things I know about you, about your business, about things that you wouldn't want the world to know. You don't have the power here. I do. And if you don't come back to me, if you don't make things right, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. Don't think you're going to get away with this." Megan, I could see Brad's hands shaking as he finished reading. His face had gone pale, the color draining from it as the reality of what Megan was threatening hit him. I hadn't realized just how far Megan was willing to go to regain control over her life. She wasn't just fighting for Brad anymore. She was fighting to destroy everything he had. "Brad, don't let her intimidate you," I said, trying to calm him down. She's just trying to scare you, make you second-guess everything. You don't have to listen to this. But Brad wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the screen, his mind racing with the possible consequences of Megan's words. He was silent for a long time before he spoke. She knows something, he said quietly. Something I don't know how she knows. She's talking about my business, my records. If she exposes something. I put my hand on his shoulder, trying to steady him. Brad, she's bluffing. If she had anything on you, she would have used it already. This is her last attempt to get control. Don't give her that power. But Brad was already on his feet, pacing back and forth. What if she's not bluffing? What if she does have something? What if she ruins everything I've worked for? Stop, I said, my voice firm. You've worked hard for everything you have. This woman doesn't have that power over you. If she tries to ruin your reputation or your business, we'll fight it. Together, you're not alone in this. Brad stopped pacing, his eyes hardening. He was processing the threat, but now, there was something else in his gaze, something that hadn't been there before. A fire, a determination. He wasn't going to let Megan win. I'm not going to let her ruin my life, Brad said finally, his voice low but resolute. I'm done with her. I've had enough. I'm going to take control of this. I nodded, relieved to see him coming to terms with the situation. He wasn't going to let fear hold him back anymore. He was going to face whatever Megan was planning. Hidden, I could see the man I had raised emerging from the ashes of this mess. But even as Brad made this decision, I knew Megan wasn't going to back down easily. She had gone too far, and now she was playing a dangerous game. The next day, Brad contacted his lawyer. It wasn't just about the threat anymore. It was about ensuring that Megan couldn't get away with blackmail. He wanted to be ready for whatever came next. As his father, I was proud of him for taking control of the situation, for not letting her manipulate him any longer. It was a few days later when the consequences of Megan's actions truly became apparent. The local news station ran a story that rocked Brad's world. It wasn't about his business or any of the things Megan had threatened to expose. It was about her. Apparently, Megan had been in a massive amount of debt for years. There had been multiple attempts to hide her financial troubles, including using Brad's name to secure loans she couldn't pay back. The truth about her financial mismanagement, her spending habits, and her desperation came to light in a way that no one could have predicted. Brad's lawyer had acted quickly, gathering all the necessary evidence to ensure Megan's threats couldn't hold water. As it turned out, her attempts at blackmail had only backfired. She hadn't realized that her own financial history was far more damaging than anything she could ever do to Brad. When Brad saw the news story, he exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Megan's lies were exposed, not just to him, but to everyone who might have supported her. She had overplayed her hand, and now she was left with nothing.
It was a bitter, ironic twist of fate. Megan had tried to control the situation by threatening Brad's future, but in the end, her own actions had led to her downfall. She had gambled everything, and lost. Brad didn't waste any time. He called Megan one last time, but this time, he wasn't angry. He was calm, almost distant. I told you I would fight back, he said, his voice steady. Now, you're the one with nothing. You played your hand, and you lost. There was no response from Megan. Not that there needed to be. The damage had been done, and now she would have to face the consequences of her own choices. Brad finally found peace. It wasn't the kind of peace he had wanted, not the one that came from fixing his marriage, but it was the peace that came from knowing that he had taken back control of his life. He had made the hard decision, and in doing so, he had proven to himself that he was stronger than he ever realized. As for Megan, her own reckoning had come. She had tried to destroy Brad's future, but in the end, she had only destroyed her own. It's strange how life works out sometimes. We fight for what we think we want, but sometimes, what we need is on the other side of that fight. Brad had lost a lot, but he had gained something far more valuable: his integrity, his strength, and his future.